Samsung's Big 2 launches at IFA 2014 with a Galaxy Note 4, similar in size to the Note 3 but with 80% more pixels and a 5.7-inch QHD screen, 3GB of RAM, etc. The Note 4 also has enhanced S Pen features, including a new Snap Note app which will turn photos of printed documents into editable text. The phablet will run Android 4.4 at launch, but you can bet on an Android L upgrade early next year. The main camera now has a 16 megapixel sensor with OIS apparently, and it's not all plastic anymore, either, with a metal outer frame and the usual faux leather back. Also launched from the stage was the, in my view, experimental Galaxy Note Edge with very similar specs but with the right edge of the screen folded over to offer an extra, very narrow 160 pixel wide viewport, used for notifications, controls or whatever else Samsung decide to offer by the time the device is actually available. Anyone else remember when 160 pixels was the entire screen back in the 1990s? The Edge screen, as it's called, can be turned on apparently independently of the main display, though this is almost certainly just an AMOLED function. It looks cool so far, but I'm sceptical whether it's anything more than a gimmick. Guess I'll have to review one nearer Christmas. Over in the Sony camp at IFA, the company's 6-month release cycle was kept up, with the latest Z revision, the Z3 being lighter and thinner than the Z2, plus nylon reinforced corners to help with drops. Oh, and the processors had a slight bump to 2.5 GHz. That's it. Still a very decent device, of course, if you can live with Sony's LCD displays. There's also a new compact, the Z3 Compact, with a 4.5-inch 720p screen. This will no doubt be my favourite of the new Z line. I'll get this in for review definitely. Sony also announced a mid-range of the E3 with a 4.5-inch screen, 1.2 GHz processor and 5 megapixel camera. 1GB of RAM, 4GB of storage plus microSD. Sounds like a Moto G competitor to me. We're still waiting for a price. Microsoft, under the Nokia brand, has launched the Lumia 730/735 and the 830. The latter is the most interesting, being the first pure-view device for a while to forego oversampling and concentrate on the OIS and a really fast 10 megapixel camera that matches most of the top-end competition in terms of hardware-accelerated multi-shot and auto HDR and dynamic flash, etc. There are some clever software tricks. It's priced competitively, though not as much as Microsoft would have us believe. Have they not seen the current price of the LG G2 recently? The 7.3X devices are slightly lower end, but are claimed to have a really good 5 megapixel front-facing camera for better selfies, it seems. We're surely near the tipping point where front cameras start outpacing rear ones. Huawei has introduced the enormous metal Ascend Mate 7 with 6-inch 1080p display and an octa-core processor. There's an apparently advanced fingerprint ID sensor on the back that even works when the screen is off and when your fingers are wet. Motorola has announced an updated Moto X with a larger 5.2-inch AMOLED 1080p screen. Yes, the bezels are small, but the increased size will still annoy fans of the perfectly formed original. There's now 16 or 32 gigabytes of storage built in, and you still can't expand it. The camera is upgraded, but you shouldn't expect too much, though it does now do 4K video capture. The battery is still sealed to at 2300 mAh, and don't be fooled by the twin grills on the front. There's still only one speaker at the bottom. As before, it's virtually stock Android and with improved always-on voice commands. Finally, there are the two new Apple iPhones, of course, the 6 and 6 Plus with 4.7 and 5.5-inch screens respectively, with the company forced to follow the trend in the wider industry led by Samsung. Thinner too, with slightly better cameras, OIS in the Plus's case, higher resolutions and faster processors, NFC, though only for payments and only in the US, iOS 8 onboard out of the box, and yes, even more expensive. Ah well, Apple's PR blacklisted me years ago, it seems, so volunteers welcome to actually review these. Mind you, as usual, anyone who wants an iPhone will get one anyway, no matter what reviewers like me say. That's just how it works. I know this is a phone show, not a smartwatch show, but I just can't help myself. Wow, Steve, jaw-dropping. You just can't get PCs that look and work like this. Amazing, Mr. Jobs. This is an experience light years beyond my old Rio and button-tastic cheap MP3 players. Steve Jobs on fire again. He claimed the interface was 5 years ahead of the competition, and he was right. I claim the iPhone specs were 3 years behind the competition, and I was right, though Apple caught up quickly in terms of camera, app stores, and so on. Steve Jobs more subdued, but you can see that the iPad would find a market, as it has in many homes, as a no-mob-proof media player and games device. Steve RIP, sadly, Tim Cook on stage. Oh, shiny, shiny. So there's a touchscreen and it's pressure sensitive. Okay, and you rotate the knob on the side to zoom the interface in and out. Then tap the knob. to action something and tap the extra side button to access contacts. So you pan and you zoom, then you pan and you tap, and then you press in the knob to tap and press and spin and tap something else, and swipe and zoom and pan and press. It's a disaster of an interface. Steve Jobs would be turning in his grave. On the other hand, Android Wear is shaping up nicely. I'll plan for a special on that later in the year. Watch this space. Having reviewed the original Moto G 9 months ago and phone show 215, I thought it's high time I looked at its successor, even better value for money. This is the Moto G 4G. And what's that? There's another new Moto G. I know, I've got it here. You sure? Oh, go check. Interruptions, I don't know. The original G was a terrific little handset that started out cheap and is now around £60 in the UK, unbelievably, for a very functional Android smartphone with very few compromises. Where it was weak, no 4G reception and limited storage, this 4G model fills in the gaps. With connectivity, obviously, plus if you take the back off now, easier said than done, you get the chance to, wonder of wonders, stick in a micro SD card. So in goes all your music and media, plus extra space for game resources and the like. Eh? You were right. But this only came out a few months ago. Go find out the specs of my assistant there. Where was I? Oh yes, imagine if I told you you could have a Google Nexus with Android 4.4.4, a great speaker, expandable storage, all for £100 or so. You'd bite my hand off. And yet this is effectively what the Moto G 4G is. The compromises with respect to a Nexus are that the screen is smaller at 4.5 inches and that the camera is a bit average at 5 megapixels. Here are some sample shots. A 1.2 GHz Snapdragon 400 and 1 gig of RAM don't sound inspiring, but for most people it's absolutely fine. Just go easy on the benchmarks and heavyweight games. But still, for the price, oh hang on, here's a missing. Oh, I give up. Here I am reviewing the Moto G 4G, and they've gone and launched the new Moto G, and it's got a larger 5-inch screen, all for the same price. But one of the things about the Moto G is its size and profile. It's just perfect for the average human hand, especially for normobs. The new 5-inch screen version is now over 1 centimetre longer and half a centimetre wider. Oh, and the new one doesn't have 4G, at least not yet. You can see Motorola's release game plan here for a few months at least. In the meantime, I'd pick this 4G as the best Moto G available. It's almost impossible not to fall in love with its form factor and value proposition. And now you can plug in a card with your music and movie collection too. It's another of my looks at my favourite Proporta products, this time focusing on a couple of related things. Firstly, this is the Pocketool, styled as a Swiss Army knife, but with data connectors replacing the various blades and tools. So full-size USB, micro USB, Apple iPhone 40-pin and Apple Lightning, all fully wired for data as well as charging. What this means is that you can head out with family for the day with just this in your pocket, and when someone's phone or tablet needs a top-up, just insert this in the right configuration between any convenient USB outlet and the device. Ditto for an emergency data sync, though I suspect that with the cloud, not that many people still hook up via USB data anymore. A terrific little tool and relatively cheap at under £10, though that's achieved by being plastic rather than the original knife's metal. Still, it's very light. It's also personalised. This is a new service from Proporta that's worth highlighting. On many products on its website, for an extra £5 or so, you can have a message of your choice laser etched by hand into the hardware. See the company's website for more.